Well, here we are, friends, nerds, and YouTube content consumers, at the end of Amazon's expensive, visually sometimes pretty, absolute train wreck of a high fantasy show. I'm going to do a non-spoiler summary before I absolutely lose my mind at the ineptitude of these hacks. Tolkien, who loathed anyone messing with his work, would be spinning so fast in his grave at this point he could power half of Europe. From all the best bits being nicked from the Peter Jackson movies, including literally stealing dialogue, as the writers seem to have a literacy age of about 6, and no, giving the actors an over-enunciated British accent does not make this English literature, to the twist that anyone with even half a brain saw coming. And finally it's over. At times, the production values have been good, and the scenery, cinematography has also been world class. So I will give the showrunners props for that. But was it a purported 60 million an episode good? And again, while some things looked expensive, etc., others looked like the costume maker from the local craft shop or amateur dramatics troupe went all out. And I'm saying this as more normie than nerdy on Lord of the Rings, so I will say thank you. Because they made me go back to the original Jackson movies. And I've watched them again recently. Unfortunately, it just made this platinum-plated pile of pig poo look infinitely worse, as has that other fantasy show that I'm desperately trying not to make comparisons with. But pig poo is still pig poo, even if you coat it with platinum. My ire at this last episode is just as, if not more, pronounced, because of all the issues I have that are present throughout the entire series. I rolled my eyes so hard at one particular line said by a certain character that I'll still be looking for my contact lenses next week. Character arcs, pacing, dialogue and outright plagiarism infest this show. This lot of mentally challenged hacks have not had an original idea for the whole season, and when they have, it's to create a 5'0" Ladriel who is just the bestest, and they also made me hate the evil little discount hobbits. I'm sure the criticism this show will rightfully receive from a lot of people will be put down to some form of ism or ist, and they will learn nothing. But at least it's over, not to resurface for another 1,000 years. Well, 2.5 anyway. I didn't think anything could make Amazon's Wheel of Time look good, and this did nearly succeed. Unfortunately, that show is still tosh too. So let's get into it, and I warn you, heavy spoilers and sarcasm are ahead. This finale begins in Erin Gale, the Greenwoods, with Tramp Discount Wizard getting the apple out, the apple, which the Butterfingers drops, and it gets picked up by Nori Doppelganger, who turns out to be Feminem, and her 2 backing singers, who then talk about worshipping him and stuff and call him Lord Sauron. Shock! Horror! I audibly gasped. Or was that giggled? He's Sauron, the Dark Lord, the evil. Cue the credits. Apparently, I read online somewhere that there is supposed to be a cryptic message hidden in these, but I always just skip them, and I wonder what they were trying to accomplish. It couldn't be mimicking that other fancy show which changes things in their credits, could it? Then we get a nice shot of the horses galloping and a new expression for Ladriel, which I think is determination. Halbrand strapped to his horse behind her. Celebrimbor and Elendil are having a chat about how they're out of time and doomed with the king coming back tomorrow. Now we see Off-Brand, definitely not Sauron, laid in bed very poorly, and they're applying very special elven magic, or perhaps what appears to be hot towels? I'm sure you get them on commercial long-haul flights sometimes. We then get a nice scene with Elendil and Ladriel, where she obviously tells him what they are to do, because she's the bestest ever. Credit, though, we get to see a little more character and some more facial expressions. It's just 2 episodes of this person being even slightly less of an arrogant, revenge-hungry, bloodthirsty demon may not be enough for people to, bond. I was expecting the Rock quote, but I think everyone else was sick, and the guy or gal who writes the dwarfs must have been borrowing the brain cell they are all sharing, and we simply get, we swim. Cue the magic rock scene, and Off-Brand, they must have been some seriously good hot towels, must be the ones you get in first class, telling our super elven smith basically how to fix the magic rock, calling the knowledge a gift. Yeah, definitely not Sauron. For those of us not quite so nerdy about Lord of the Rings as the fanatics, I have been doing a little research. Google is a wonderful thing. And supposedly Sauron used to appear as the elf Anatar, the Lord of the Gifts. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, writers, yeah? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But so not Sauron. We then get the king of Numenor, who's obviously on his last legs, spouting about returning to the old ways. Numenorian meanie bloke and the lass that we last saw what feels like ages ago, Irian, who still hasn't really done anything. For the record, she's made up, and is supposed to be Elendil's daughter and sister of obviously not dead Isildur. These are completely pointless scenes which add nothing and just slows the pace again. For a finale, this episode is so slow that you could fit in an ice age and it will still have gone nowhere. We then have the elves chatting to the king about making him a crown, and he says, no, too late, get on the boat and stop dithering her out. And as part of that, Celebrimbor says power over flesh. Ladriel gets all suspicious. Then the wettest elf in Schmiddle-earth, who is supposed to marry Ladriel's daughter and father's Arwen, pleads with the elf king Gilgahad, and they get 3 weeks. Cue suspicious Ladriel asking Scholar Elf to look up the history lineage of the kings of the Southlands and just don't tell anyone, right? We then get courtyard scene where Halbrand appears to have had a complete personality transplant and might as well be twiddling a moustache, but definitely can't be. Back to Feminem and the backup singers, and we get Tramp Gandalf displaying some of his powers. They appear to time up and up pop camouflage stealth half-rights. You knew that hiding from episode 1 would come in handy, right? And when they go to release him, shock, horror, the writers have done a bait and switch again, with Norrie being Feminem. Cue Lenny Henry, terrible accent, Sadok getting skewered. Tramp Gandalf tries to help and gets kicked about by Feminem. We then get Feminem going all Firestarter, Twisted Firestarter. Norrie gets the staff, gives it to down on his luck Gandalf, who now seems to have a great English accent and recovered most of his faculties, who wipes out the warrior nuns and turns them into, moths. Because Gandalf has a thing for moths.
From shadow you came. To shadow I bid you return.
He is not Sauron. He is the other. He is bad. He is...
I'm good.
Oh, wait. Remember that scene where he talks to the moth in the Peter Jackson movies? Then Sadok turns up and the nasty little hobbits just let him die, along with Gandalf, who nods sagely. And apparently, whilst he can regenerate an entire grove, banish warrior nun, ring wraith dudettes, he now can't manage to heal a simple stab wound. I guess the casting director didn't like his acting either. Next is more pointless drag your feet scenes below deck in the Queen's ship. And I think this is meant to suggest that there's some form of love stuff going on between these two. But with all the other supposed taboo repressed loves going on, at this point I couldn't care less. But we do get to see Numenor with black flags, showing the king is dead, which is pretty. We then get some smelting scenes with the magic rocks. The excitement. Honestly, the excitement. And all this in the finale. Smelting! I do love a good smelting scene. Cue a bad writer to spoil it all with some really crappy dialogue and something about coaxing the metal. Apparently the magic rock is proud. We're not quite sure why. Ladriel, meanwhile, is getting the scroll back for the Southlands, and cocky, multiple personality Halbrand comes to find her. What follows is not only stupid, it's completely out of character for them both. So Halbrand, absolutely, positively, definitely not Sauron, is in fact definitely Sauron.
Tell me your name.
I have been awake since before the breaking of the first silence. In that time, I have had many names.
Shucks, writers, really. It's not like the internet has known pretty much since the character was introduced. So after telling Ladriel to let them continue their work on the rings and her trying to shank him with the dagger that has been waved around in this series more than American flags on the 4th of July or the St George's Cross at an England match. So, must be important then. We get dream sequence with brother and then boat sequence, and it appears that Sauron just wants to marry Ladriel and rule Middle-earth together, and she will bind him to the light. So at this point I'm wondering how dumb Sauron is. Has he met Galadriel from 2 episodes ago? The one that was going to spread orc entrails everywhere? And now we can assume that you'll find out in season 2 he has her hubby locked in a basement dungeon somewhere. But I have some praise and credit for some of the visual effects here. The reflection is awesome, a very cool effect. I really did like it. And so are the contact lenses when Ladriel refuses his offer.
When you tell them that you are my ally, when you tell them that Sauron lives because of you!
And you will die because of me!
She wakes up, having been in the river, and makes Elendil tell her some backstory to prove it's really him. So as well as being an arrogant and unlikable she now has trust issues and deigns not to tell him what's going on. We then cut to the Hawthrights and Norrie and Gandalf, who now has a perfect English accent. McClellan would be proud, and has gone all wise sage. Norrie is not going with him, and then she is, and it's possibly the longest, least interesting goodbye scene. There's some weird dialogue, and then some of the most shameless plagiarism, again from the Jackson movies, about following your nose.
Not entirely. There's a sweet smell on the air this way. When in doubt, Eleanor Brandyfoot. Always follow your nose.
Proving irrefutably that it's Gandalf, because it couldn't be Lord of the Rings unless we have Gandalf and a short person. At this point watching this to do the review, I did seriously nearly throw something at the telly. We also then get some chanting about stay on the path and no one left behind until someone is left behind. They also appeared to just abandon their little farms and crops and can actually go travelling again, even though all of their worldly goods have been cremated, including most of the food. I give them 2 weeks. It would have been smarter if they'd settled and made the Shire due to not having enough food to continue travelling, and more in keeping with the bloody law considering they are a proto-hobbit. Next, remember the dagger that Ladriel keeps trying to shank everyone with and was her brother's? The one that was featured in every episode with the camera giving it long, lingering looks whenever possible? Wow, this is going to surprise you, I know, and shock you. But it's needed to forge the rings. Who knew? Oh, and Ladriel says some bollocks about there need to be 3 rings. As one corrupts, 2 divides. Now, they could have been clever here and used it to represent the Trinity, as Tolkien was a very religious man. But no, they just went with, let's make up some tosh that sounds good. I think that brain cell had obviously rolled under the writer's table again. We're back to smelting and some more smelting, plus Elendil pops out and finds the King of the Southland Scroll, and then some more ringwork and smelting, to finally produce the ugliest 3 rings you have ever seen. Honestly, what Christmas cracker did the props department get these out of? Even Claire's accessory does better tat than this. We finish off with, and I will give credit where it's due, the VFX guys must have been in charge today of that brain cell, with the rings fading to Sauron's eyes as we see him enter Mordor. If you look closely, you can see the eye of Sauron in his eye as well. I thought this was inventive and a nice touch. It's hammy, but considering the rest of this finale, I liked it. We then get someone singing the Rings poem against the ending credits. Again, the elven rings were supposed to have been forged last and in secret, so it's law-breaking, as there are lots of rings. And it's over, finally over. I get 2 years minimum till I have to watch that shit show, the literal term for it, again. In conclusion, it would appear that Amazon just can't do fantasy, and the influence of J.J. Abrams, responsible for ruining everything else in terms of franchises that I loved, has completed his circle. Star Trek, Star Wars, and now Lord of the Rings. Having supported unknown showrunners in them getting the gig and being available for, in brackets, support. I really dislike this show. I don't care about the whole melanin thing, I just want well-written plot, character and dialogue. And whilst the cinematography is beautiful, even here, it copies PJ's helicopter vista shots from the trilogy. Plus, this is high fantasy. It reflecting modern politics makes no sense. People go to entertainment to escape the real world, not to get bloody more of it. Every good idea or nice touch they've had has been straight out copied from the trilogy. And then there's the pacing. My tortoise moves faster than this, and he's hibernating at the moment. The costuming has been completely hit and miss. The armour has been at times laughable and looked 3D printed. They've had copy-paste crowds because they couldn't afford the extras. They were too busy coming up with the helicopter vista shots and CGI stuff, I guess. The character development has been non-existent. I don't think I need to address the elf in the room, but Ladriel appears to now be taking her medication again, and for 2 straight episodes is a sympathetic character. You just can't do this narratively. She's several thousand years old at this point. Her face did move this episode though, so they've also eased up on the Botox injections. I don't care about the fact she's a warrior. Yeah, it's law-breaking, but if she was physically imposing, athletic, it would be more believable. I feel really sorry for Morphy Clark and blame the casting director. What were you thinking, love? And the writers. I did like the dwarves, but even their storyline was dig for magic rocks. Don't dig for magic rocks, spread out over 3 episodes. As a whole, I'd rate this as a 4 out of 10, and that 4 is for some of the visuals. Do not bother with a Prime subscription for this. Ride out on a horse called Torrent if you're that curious. I've been midlife nerded, watching absolute garbage, so you don't have to. And I'd be awful grateful if you could give us a like or a subscribe to let the YouTube algorithm know that I exist. Until next time.